Hello everybody, and welcome to my 620 subscriber special, in which I will be breaking down the first episode of Walking with Monsters. The episode is often known as Water Dwellers, but this was just made up by some kid who edited onto Wikipedia, and it has since become practically the official title. Like Sea Monsters, the episodes of Walking with Monsters are split into multiple segments. There also exists a version of Walking with Monsters, which is an omnibus version, containing all 3 episodes combined into an hour-and-a-half long movie. And this is the version of Walking with Monsters which I grew up on. The episode begins with a brief mini-segment set on Stadion Earth, which depicts the collision with Theia, a smaller planet that crashed into the Earth, forming the Moon. It is proposed that much of the Earth's water was brought here by Theia, which, although the true origin of Earth's water is debated, this is one potential hypothesis for its origin. The segment is set 530 million years ago in China. It is based on the Maotianshan Shale. However, this was laid down approximately 518 million years ago, not 530, and therefore most of the creatures appearing in the segment did not evolve until much later than it is said. It was filmed around the island of Socotra in Yemen. Jellyfish appear. They seem to be live-acted by a jelly blubber. There is a basal jellyfish, Prisca penamarina, known from the Maotianshan Shale. Trilobites appear. These are often theorized to be Redlichia. Redlichia was a redlichioid trilobite from the Cambrian, approximately 538 to 497 million years ago, of China, Australia, Kazakhstan, Russia, India, and Antarctica, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. However, the trilobites in the episode do not really resemble Redlichia, which had prominent spikes on its back. Redlichia isn't even known from the Maotianshan Shale. What is, however, is its fellow Redlichioid, Quanyangia, which closely resembles the trilobite from the series. Unknown sessile organisms appear in the background. These could be Alonia, which was a chancellorid, with that being an order of sponge-like basal animals. Nomalocaris was a nomalocaridid radiodont, an order of basal arthropods. It lived in the early to mid-Cambrian, 520 to 499 million years ago, of Canada, Australia, the US and China, meaning it lived at the right place to appear. It wouldn't evolve for approximately 10 million years after the segment setting. Nomalocaris is not known from the Maotianshan Shale, at least not anymore. Innovatiacaris, which is what the long-tailed Nomalocaris in the episode is based on, with this being a trait not known from the actual Nomalocaris, was once thought to belong to Nomalocaris, but now is known to be its own genus. Nomalocaris is massively oversized, with it only reaching approximately 38 centimeters max, rather than the 2 meters of the series. Incidentally, an Innovatiacaris only reached about 15 centimeters long. Nomalocaris and other radiodonts did not feed on trilobites, rather they ate soft-bodied creatures, and as such would not have been able to pierce each other's armor either. Nomalocaris is not actually the world's first super predator. In fact, the holder of this title did live in the Maotianshan Shale. Omnidens, a massive worm-like arthropod relative and the largest known Cambrian animal, which reached a titanic 1.5 meters, or at least titanic for the Cambrian. Nomalocaris is given a single rigid body plate, when in reality this would have been split into segments. Hycoichthyes was a Mylocummingiid family of incredibly basal agnathan or jawless fish from the early to mid-Cambrian, 518 million years ago, of China, meaning it lived in the right place to appear, but like most of the creatures in this segment, didn't evolve for many millions of years after the segment's setting. Hycoichthyes is stated to be the size of a man's thumb. It was actually smaller than this, being only an inch, 2.5 centimeters, long. It is referred to as the first ever fish, while it, along with Mylocummingia, is the oldest definitive fish known. The enigmatic Unanazoon predates these both by almost 10 million years, but its placement as a fish is uncertain. Next we get to one of the most vexing parts of the series, the evolution sequences. These show the supposed evolutionary transitions between creatures within the segments and provide a neat transition between the different periods covered. Unfortunately, a lot of them are incredibly inaccurate. This one, however, is reasonably accurate, as it is believed that more derived jawless fish, such as Osteostraci, evolved from basal agnathans like Hycoichthyes. This segment is set 418 million years ago in Wales. The segment supposedly takes place in the Silurian, but actually is set in the earliest Devonian. The segment appears to be set in the St. Morgan/Freshwater West Formation. It was filmed in and around Lake Powell in Arizona and Utah. Cephalaspis was an osteostracan, a bony and armored jawless fish. The only definitive species of Cephalaspis, Cephalaspis lyelli, is known from the Devonian approximately 419 to 393 million years ago of Scotland, meaning it lived at the right time and potentially the right place to appear. There are 9 species of Osteostracan known from the St. Morgan's/Freshwater West Formation that have been indeterminately assigned to Cephalaspis, but none of the Cephalaspis lyelli. Cephalaspis is too wide. Cephalaspis' head would have been too heavy for it to jump out of the water. What appears to be graptolites are shown in the background. A graptolite known from the early Devonian of the UK as Monograptus. Sea urchins appear. There are trace fossils of sea urchins feeding, known as Gnathicnus, that date back to the Ordovician from Britain, so it is known that they occurred there. Brontoscorpio was a basal scorpion, maybe, from the earliest Devonian, 416 to 412 million years ago, of England, meaning it lived around the right time and place to appear. Brontoscorpio was called a sea scorpion, or Eurypterid, in the episode, but it wasn't. It was actually a true scorpion, which lived underwater. But, in fact, this may not be true, as it was only known for a single claw, which may instead belong to a giant crustacean, such as a crab or lobster. Brontoscorpio almost certainly molted underwater due to its size. Brontoscorpio would have had numerous smaller eyes like modern scorpions, which have 6 to 12, not 2 large ones. There is no evidence for Brontoscorpio having a second pair of smaller claws. It is claimed that Brontoscorpio did not have a memory. This is patently ridiculous. Almost all except the most basal animals have a memory, and some invertebrates, including arthropods, are very intelligent. Small fish appear. Based on their body shape, they could be acanthodians, 3 indeterminate species of which are known from the St. Morgan's/Freshwater West Formation. An orthocone appears, reusing the Camarasaurus model from Sea Monsters. Various orthocones tentatively assigned to Orthoceras are known from the Devonian of the UK, although the only definitive species of Orthoceras is known from the much earlier Ordovician. These would almost certainly have been much smaller than the Camarasaurus-sized individuals portrayed in the series. Pterygotus was a pterygotoid Eurypterid, or sea scorpion, from the mid-Silurian to late Devonian, 428 to 372 million years ago, of basically the entire world, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. Pterygotus was not the largest ever arthropod, and did not reach the sizes shown in the episode. This title belongs to Gecalopterus, which didn't evolve for approximately 8 million years after the segment setting and lived only in estuaries and freshwater. Pterygotids were not ambush predators, instead being active swimming hunters. Although there is no direct evidence for pterygotus mothers caring for their offspring, we do have fossils showing that at least some Eurypterids would congregate as juveniles, and some extant crustaceans care for their young. Giant sponges, or Stromatoporoidea, appear. A stromatoporoid which lived in the UK at the right time to appear was Amphipora. Cooksonia appears. Cooksonia was a rhinophyte, the clade containing the most basal vascular plants, from the mid-Silurian to early Devonian, 433 to 393 million years ago, of most of the world, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. Stegocephalians, such as Hynerpeton, did not evolve from osteostracans like Cephalaspis. Instead, they evolved from blood-fin fish, which had already evolved in the Silurian. The segment is set 360 million years ago in the late Devonian of Pennsylvania. It is set in the Catskills Formation. It was filmed at the Devil's Postpile National Monument in California, USA. Hynerpeton was a relatively basal non-tetrapod stegocephalian from the late Devonian, 365 to 363 million years ago, of Pennsylvania, meaning it lived in the right place at around the right time to appear. The Hynerpeton appears to be almost perfectly accurate. What appears to be an angelfish appears. True freshwater angelfish did not evolve until the Eocene at the earliest, more than 320 million years after the segment setting, so it would have to be some other kind of angelfish like Devonian fish. A fish from the Catskill Formation that could fill this role is Turanaspis, a kind of placoderm known as a Greenland aspid. A scorpion appears. Though there are no scorpions known from the Catskill Formation, there is a different kind of arachnid known from there, Gigantocorinus, which was a Trigonotarbidon, an order of basal arachnids, which look like weird spiders. Trees appear. These are most likely intended to be Archaeopteris. Stethocanthus returns from sea monsters. Stethocanthus was a Somoriform basal cartilaginous fish from the late Devonian to late Carboniferous, 382 to 298 million years ago, of Eurasia, North America and Australia, meaning it lived in the right time to appear. Stethocanthus was most likely an oceanic fish, so would not have been suited to the river it is depicted as living in the series. There is an indeterminate holocephalian, which could possibly be a Somoriform, a Geliotus from the Catskill Formation. As mentioned earlier, Stethocanthus was not a shark, but rather was more closely related to modern chimeras, therefore it is incorrect for the series to refer to it as a shark. It should have small spines atop its head and dorsal structure, and it is oversized, as only the Carboniferous species reached the lengths shown in the episode. Hyneria was a tristocopterid eotetrapodiform, clade containing the stegocephalians and their closest relatives. It lived in the late Devonian, approximately 372 to 358 million years ago, of Pennsylvania and South Africa. Its size is exaggerated in the episode, only reaching approximately 3 meters long in reality, rather than the 7 meters depicted in the series. It is incredibly unlikely that Hyneria could climb onto land. Reptiles evolving from basal tetrapods, colloquially amphibians, along with developing shelled eggs is roughly accurate, if oversimplified. The episode features an epilogue tying into the next episode, as well as a preview of the upcoming episodes. And that was Walking with Monsters episode 1. Thank you so much for getting me to 640 subscribers. I have a Discord server and a second channel, both linked in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. I will be breaking down the second episode of Walking with Monsters, which doesn't have a title. I hope you have a good day. Goodbye. Redlichio was a redlichioid. This title belongs to Geekalopterus. The Hynerpeton